Welcome to Marriage Unmasked. Today we're talking about the 3 ways that you are emasculating your husband. And I first want to say, I think sometimes when we're talking about behavior or we're talking about unhealthy habits or things like that, you can kind of take it 2 ways. I don't want you to take it. One is where you are sensitive to people accusing or people condemning. I've been there too, where you can take it as an accusation against you personally when it isn't necessarily meant that way. And we are not bringing this as an accusation today. I want you to know that we are meeting you with love and compassion. If some of this rings true, I don't want you to feel shame about it at all. The other way I think sometimes you can take it is we can actually crave it. We actually want to hear, like, how else do I need to be better? And I know when I was younger and I was getting a lot of religious messaging around sin and you're a miserable sinner and, you need to do this and do that, the right thing, the wrong thing. I actually craved the law. How else do I need to do this? How can I be better? How can I be perfect? And that's not the way we want you to take it either, because this isn't about behavior. It's not about performance. You are already perfectly loved. Sometimes when we're hurting, we act in ways that are not congruent with who we really are. And so that might be some of the reasons why this is showing up for you, if it is showing up for you, right? So we are just pouring love on you today. We're not blaming, we're not accusing. And also, this isn't about trying to tell you to silence yourself either. Like if you're like, okay, yes, I see that I have done some of this. That doesn't mean shut yourself down. I know I've done that too. I've kind of gone to the extreme, like, and I think that comes from shaming, right? You're shaming yourself. And so you're like, okay, I just won't say anything because clearly I'm so bad. I'm a bad wife. And that's not where we're coming from at all. And we're also not coming from a place of asking you to ignore the pain, the problems that are behind this and just telling you to pretend it's okay. Nope, none of that. So we understand, and I understand as somebody who has admittedly emasculated Adam, there's more to the story. It's not just I decided to wake up one day and be emasculating to my husband. I know that you actually want a strong, emotionally safe man who you can relax into, but you might be unknowingly tearing down what you really want to build up. And God created you to build up too. So that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about emasculating, and that is something that really kind of shuts him down.
So what is emasculating your husband? What does that look like? Emasculating a man has to do with attacking or going after the core of who he is and his identity. The way I like to really look at it is you're seeing him and treating him outside of the way that God sees him and treats him. Because God has gifted him with certain unique things about him as a man, his strength, his ability. God made him uniquely masculine, and you're looking at him through a lens of pain and treating him through a lens of pain instead of looking at him and seeing him and treating him the way that God sees him and treats him. And I think that is, I think, one of the better ways to look at emasculation, because what it does is it attacks the root of his strength and his identity, who God says he is. And this is something that he also, in some ways, participates in, because in order for these kind of things to land, in order for him to really be torn down, he also has to sort of take these things in and agree with them and adopt them as information about his identity as well. But that is the key part of it, is it's seeing and treating him in a way that is not in line with what God says.
And that usually happens because you feel hurt, you feel alone, you feel emotionally unsafe, you feel unseen, you feel like you're bracing for more of the same. And so you show up in this really hurting way. And I know in one of the hardest parts of our marriage, I was working as a personal trainer, and every afternoon I would go to work, and we had 4 little kids at that time. And the plan was for Adam to come home and be with the kids so that I could go to work. And that was really stressful over and over and over again, because I would check in with him like, okay, you're going to be here. I have to leave at, 3:30 or whatever. And then he's like, okay, yes, I'll be there. And so I'm getting ready to go. And then he would text me or call me 10 minutes before I have to walk out the door and say, I'm going to be late. And then I would just freak out because I had to get 4 kids ready for a daycare is no easy feat.
Especially with no time to do it.
right into teaching my fitness classes and training my clients. And so it was very stressful for me. And this would happen over and over again. And I remember a lot of times I would literally freak out at him. And I would say, I can't believe you're doing this, right? Get so upset, yell at him. I would probably, call you, I don't know what. And I'd say, you've shown me who you are. I guess I just need to believe this is who you are. You're somebody who doesn't keep your word. You're somebody I can't depend on. I can't trust. And what I was doing there was very damaging to him. I was coming from this place of really hurting, and I felt like I don't know what else to do. And so I said those things, and they were extremely hurtful. They were emasculating, and my kids, they heard that, they felt that, because the thing that I noticed in our marriage, at least, is when I have emasculated Adam, the kids notice. And they can also take on that same tone with him. Or I know one of my daughters has said to me things like, you're mean to daddy, or things like that. And so they usually take one or the other side. It causes a lot of pain for the family in general then.
Yeah, and this has a really strong effect on us as men when that happens. And again, yeah, Cara was in a lot of pain. So that pain was coming out at me. But what that often does for me, especially, and I know for other men, working with other men, is it tends to have us shut down and withdraw. Because when we feel attacked in our identity, in who we are as men, there's no way to fix that. This is who I am to her. There's nothing I can do to change that other than try to perform out of it. So a lot of times what it does, we just shut down. We withdraw from the relationship because men gravitate more towards where they feel successful, where they feel like they're effective, where they feel like they're getting respect and honor. And if you're not getting that there in the relationship, you tend to sort of withdraw from the relationship and almost like I don't know what it'd be, like an animal who gets wounded, wants to go off into a cave and heal for a while before coming back. And that is what it is for men. It doesn't draw us into the relationship. It actually makes us want to separate so that we can go and lick our wounds. We can heal. We can somehow try to recover a sense of being a man again, and a sense of the stronger identity. And sometimes that's the only thing we know how to do, is we just shut it down, close off, and try to heal our wounds on our own and isolate. And that's not necessarily the healthiest thing to do, but that is often what men do when they are feeling emasculated in their relationship, is they check out of it.
And that actually often amplifies the pain for a wife, because what she's kind of doing is she's kind of trying to challenge him to show up differently. For me, that was kind of a cry for help. Is this really who you are?
Right.
Show me someone different if this isn't who you are. But then when he would just check out and he wouldn't answer me, he would stop talking to me. It just confirmed what I already was thinking about him. And it just made it even more painful, because now I'm thinking even less of him.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's affirming that.
Right. And so that's good for us as men to recognize, is that when this is happening, it's usually a cry for help. We don't take it that way. We take it more as an attack often. But what it is, if you can reframe it and you can go okay, this is information. It's not an attack. The information she's giving me right now is that she is crying out for help. She needs something from me. If you can reframe it into that instead of an attack, it can help you move through it, and it can help you see things differently and actually go after repair and pursue her again, rather than retreat and hide and try to heal from an attack. So reframing that is very powerful for us.
I think that what's going on behind for a woman, as we get into these three things, she's living in this self-protective state, which I was kind of talking about a little bit before in my story. And so when you're in that place, your energy shifts and you start managing, controlling, and you're trying to get peace. But that energy is often that's a masculine energy, and it's coming against his masculinity. And so you're actually butting heads. And a lot of times you're trying to break down that masculinity of his. And so it just causes this massive imbalance in the dynamic too. And it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. You don't feel more peaceful. Yeah. The pain is not gone. It's actually worse. It felt worse for me.
Yeah.
Because then he's checked out, and then I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm in this alone, and then I'm over functioning. And that actually led to a season of adrenal fatigue for me, because I was trying to do everything myself then, because he was just kind of checked out. And I'm speaking just so many emasculating things over him during that season, because I was in so much pain and I was showing up just completely out of who I really am.
Yeah, they tend to be a toxic cycle that can keep on happening then, because the more she would come at me a certain way, the more I would withdraw, and the more I would withdraw and check out, the more that encouraged her to come after me more, because we're both trying to get what we need and grasping for what we need, rather than seeing who we are in Christ and being strong and powerful in how God sees us and showing up from a more healed place.
Yeah. So as I share number one, I don't want you to see yourself as a problem to be fixed, right? Because just because you're hurting doesn't mean you're a problem, or doesn't mean you need to fix yourself. You are already a beautiful, loved daughter of God, and you are already perfectly loved right now in this moment. And in those moments where you have hurt your husband, you still are perfectly loved in those moments. The first one is correcting and criticizing. And that's, that is kind of what I was doing in what I shared. This is especially common for women who are in leadership, or they are very capable. They're strong women. And I was that. Like, I'm a personal trainer. I would lead fitness classes. I'm a teacher. I am very capable. I was very good at leading. And so it was very easy for me to kind of slip into this more masculine energy. And then when he's showing weakness, I'm like, okay, boom, right? It's easy for me to like lay the hammer down. It's not funny, really.
No, it's not. Believe me, I know it's not funny.
No, I know it was so painful for him. And I am so like sad about how things played out between us, because it just wasn't helpful for either one of us. We were both so deeply hurting. When we're correcting, right, we're kind of correcting from this place of like superiority almost sometimes. We have stories in our heads, and I know I did. Like he can't even handle the responsibilities that he has. He is not managing his life well. I can't trust him. Things like that. Stories sometimes come out in our tone, in our energy, and correction doesn't always sound mean. We think criticism, okay, yeah, that's mean, but correction sometimes is very sneaky, right? It can sound like, you forgot that, or why don't you do it this way? Why don't you try it that way? The thought underneath it is like, I can do this better than you, or like, you're not doing it quite right. And that is the thought, that's the energy, that's what they're getting from it, even if it doesn't sound mean.
Right. And so what it can come across to then is like, I'm not good enough. That's often the thought that starts to grow inside of our mind as a man is, I'm not good enough. I want to be a competent, capable, strong man. In sort of a subtle way, it's undermining that, and it's teaching a man, you're not really strong enough for me. You're not capable enough for me. You're not good enough for me, is that's the message that starts to come across. Or it also comes out as not noticing things that he is doing well, or that he is stepping up in. And so he's not getting any appreciation. He is working, he is doing some things, but those things seem to go unnoticed or unseen. And appreciation is part of the oxygen that a man breathes on in his relationship. He knows that she sees him, that she cares about what he's doing, that he is contributing, that he is effective in what he's doing. He's successful as a man. And there's like a lack of appreciation for those things. And that coupled with criticism and correcting and all that, he starts to really feel like my wife, who's the closest person to me, sees me this way. So I must be really incompetent. That's not the story that God is speaking over him, obviously, but he can start to think that way and adopt that story for himself. And that can be very painful and can cause him to feel like he can't do anything right. He can step back out of responsibilities then and just say like, okay, well, I mean, obviously I can't do this good enough, so I guess I'll just let her take care of all this. And so then he starts to step out of his role and his responsibility even more. And that again creates more for her to do and more for her to manage, and that's really unhelpful as well.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes men lash out, right? They lash out right back to you. They'll criticize you, then they'll correct you, and so sometimes then you just get this back and forth tit and tat kind of thing. But really, this all comes back to like how you're seeing each other. And I want to talk about Jesus' baptism, and this may seem like totally unrelated, but that happened before Jesus was doing miracles and things like that. And God said, "This is my son whom I love, and I am well pleased by him." And I think that's so important to know. Like, I think a lot of times with our performance, we're going for a pat on the back, we're going for affirmation, we're going for appreciation, but you already are affirmed as loved and chosen and enough because God says you are, right? He says, you are my son. I'm well pleased by you. Or you are my daughter. I'm well pleased by you. I love you. And that doesn't come after you perform.
Yeah.
And so I think that's so important to remember that identity, you can come back to your identity, whether you are being emasculated or doing the emasculating, that's not who you are anyways. But when you find yourself in that hurting place, come back to your identity, either one of you in this position, right? Whether you're hurting the other or feeling hurt, when you come back to who you are, you show up very differently.
Yeah, it's really powerful. We are one with Christ. He loved us and died for us, and we are covered in him. We have that identity all the time. So the Father says those exact same words over us. We are in Christ. We have his identity covering us. And so it's a beautiful thing to know that that is how the Father is always seeing us. He's always seeing us as my beloved son, my beloved daughter. And that's really powerful.
And we're not saying don't show appreciation, right? Or you don't need to feel appreciated. Sure, that can be a need for you, and that is valid. And that's why I think it's important for us wives to remember our words have power. They speak life or they speak death. They can build up or tear down. And so criticism is kind of that tearing down, that I don't trust you, I don't believe in you, you're not enough. Whereas appreciation is like, I see you, I value you, you matter. And so that's really going to help build him up. And that's going to help him be exactly who you need and want him to be, right? That strong man that you can relax into.
Yeah, and I think it is okay for a wife to bring up things that he needs to see sometimes. And the way that she brings it up can be really powerful and important too, that she brings it up in more of a soft feminine energy rather than a masculine energy where she's coming at him and correcting and criticizing and saying this has to be a certain way. It's interesting because a man will often receive those kind of things better out in the world from the workforce or from other things. He will receive that better from other men often. It's understandable that a wife would think, well, I can just say these things to him. I can just criticize him. I can just test him in these ways. But often the dynamic in a relationship like that, in a marriage, is a man is going out into the world. He's expecting that test out there. He's expecting to be criticized out there. He's expecting that kind of environment that is going to grow him and that is challenging him. And oftentimes he might get tested out in the world, but when he comes home, he wants to rest. When he comes home, he wants to relax. He wants to be recharged. And that's kind of the energy he's often looking for at home, is not a testing energy. And so then when he comes home and he's being tested there as well and being tried and challenged and criticized in a certain way, that can hit different for a man at home than it does out in the workforce. And I know that from experience too, because I think I've shared this before, but I was part of a brotherhood and they started to say some of the same things that Cara was really criticizing me for at home. And it wouldn't land from her. She would be saying these things to me and I would brush them off, put a wall up and not listen to her because I thought she had an agenda and she was trying to speak into my life things that needed to change. It wasn't landing for me as a man until I heard it from other men, until other men started saying these same things. Then it started to open my eyes okay, I really need to pay attention to these things. And that's no shade on women saying these things to men. It's just that the way that we often receive things at home is different than the way we receive them out in the world or from other men when we're expecting to be challenged and expecting to be tested in that way.
So number 2 is disrespect. And I think sometimes we don't even know what disrespect is. I know a lot of times Adam has been like, that's disrespectful. And I'm like, what do you mean that's disrespectful? So go through what does this actually look like? Adam, add any that you want. Sure. But eye rolling, or sarcasm. These are some of the things Adam has said to me. So I know talking negatively about him to other people or to your kids, right? Speaking to him like a child, again, kind of like that condescending energy, or dismissing his perspective, that's invalid. No, that is not what happened. You don't get it. You don't get to have a say. Or interrupting or talking over him when he's trying to talk. Belittling his ideas, where it's no, that's never going to work. No, you don't even understand. Or mocking his efforts, where he might do something and you're like, that's what you did? You did that? You thought that's how you put the dishes in the dishwasher? they're never going to get cleaned, right? That kind of thing. So those are just some of the ways that it looks.
Yeah, and it can also be not so much what you say, it can also be how you say it. It's a very condescending tone. That energy can come across, or sometimes it's the facial expressions. It's like one look from your wife and you just know.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm a very expressive
yes,
person.
yes, and maybe that's not always the case, but at least for Kara, I can read her face like a book. Like, okay, she thinks that was ridiculous. She thinks I am a complete flop here. So sometimes it comes across in the energy and things like that. And disrespect for a man, it is very hard, because just like you as a woman would never want somebody to say, I hate you, or to like treat you in a way that felt very disconnecting and very demeaning. So a man also needs that respect. That is also like oxygen and food for him in the relationship. It fuels him, it helps him. And when there's disrespect, it really makes him feel small in the relationship and shrink. He's very embarrassed by that, especially when you're doing it out in public or things like that. A man's reputation is something that is very powerful in the world. If I walk into a room full of men, there's this code of respect that is almost unspoken, where you are seen as an effective man because of how you are treated, how you are respected. And if somebody doesn't, that means this person is no longer effective in our group. This person is now, he is less than, and he is outcast from the group because he doesn't have the respect of the group. And so for men, we operate in that world all the time, in this world of respect. And when we come home, we would expect as men to be most respected by the person who most loves us. Like, that means the most to us, that, okay, she really respects me. This is where I can kind of let my guard down. I don't have to put on this armor and this shield. But what often happens then is when we're getting disrespected at home too, then we feel like we have to put that armor and that shield on all the time, and we have to constantly be on. And we can't ever let our guard down. And that can be really hard as a man. And you start to feel small. You start to feel embarrassed. You start to feel like there's something wrong with you in your identity as a man, because your own wife thinks of you and treats you in a certain way that is disrespectful. So the opposite is also very true. When he's being treated with respect from his wife, it is super empowering for him. It fuels him. When she is behind me, I know that she believes in me, that she is looking at me with respect in our relationship. I go out into the world and I can go through fire for her. Like, it really does fuel something. It turns something on inside of a man. It turns on an energy that he doesn't always have to tap into. But when he has the respect of his wife behind him, fueling him on, he can take on things that he normally wouldn't even try to take on, because men want to step up. They want to go after things. And when they have a wife who is really respectful and loving and fueling him on, he goes after those things so much more powerfully.
So number 3 is communicating from control. And I want to kind of flesh this out for you a little bit. What does this look like? Anytime we're moving from control or trying to control, we're moving from fear. We're afraid of being hurt, of being disappointed, of being powerless. And that's kind of what I was feeling, right? When I was telling my story about working at the fitness center, and I was trying to control, and I was communicating from that place too. And so some of the time what that sounds like is like, you need to this, right? So for me, it was like, you need to be on time. You need to, I don't care what you need to do at work, but you need to be here when you say you're going to be here, right? Or you should be doing that. You should be, right? You need to plan your schedule better. You need to manage your time better. You should be a more present father. There's all kinds of these you shoulds. Why didn't you? Why didn't you do what you said you're going to do? Why didn't you handle that? Why didn't you step in and help with the kids? And another one is, this is what needs to happen, right? And it's all coming. You can kind of feel that masculine energy, right? When I'm talking like that, this is what needs to happen. You're telling him, you're talking down to him, you're trying to control. You have a master plan of what needs to happen so that you feel okay. And so you're laying that out for him, right? But that is not a relaxed posture for you. It is not this feminine energy that really inspires those things in him. And it's like in a headbutt, right? He's like, oh, You're going to tell me what to do, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, and it's exhausting for you as a woman, right? This is part of over functioning. You're managing everything. And again, there's kind of this energy of like, you're not capable and I am. And so I'm going to manage everything. I can't rely on you. And so I've laid out a plan and you need to follow it. And so it's very emasculating for a man.
Yeah, he wants to feel needed. He doesn't want to feel controlled. What is more powerful for a man is to have an invitation, like where his wife is inviting these things. It's not like she can't communicate those things. Sometimes those things it is valuable for him to know, like where things are off or what needs to happen or those kind of things. But it's really how you communicate them. If you communicate them in a feminine, invitational way, instead of coming over top of him and trying to dictate to him what he's doing. Because a man, he wants to be your hero. He wants to step into that energy. He wants to do things and he wants to have a good plan and he wants to like fulfill all those things. But he's more willing to be your hero than he is to be your slave or your servant.
Or your kid.
Or your kid. The energy is like invitation. Like invite him to be your hero instead of tell him what to do and how to do it. And I think that's a very powerful like energy shift for women to make.
Yeah, and we do that when we are relaxed, right? When we are relaxed into our femininity and we are not operating in the survival mode. I actually just did an entire module for my Femininity Restored course for my restored wives on feminine communication because communication is such a big area of so much pain for couples. We coach them on communication all the time. And it can just create so much pain or it can bring you so close. And what I did in my module, like what I talked about, I'm not saying, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to fix that, you need to, no, because that's actually not what it's about. Mm-hmm. It's not about 10 tips to communicate better. It's not about the words that you choose. It's really about the energy. And so when you are relaxed, when you are open, you're soft, you're joyful, right? You are relaxed into who you are. You know you are perfectly loved and you are overflowing from that abundant place. That's when you're able to really be who you are. You already are that woman, but a lot of times you're hurting and there's this hard shell around your heart. And so you're closed off. You're trying to protect yourself. And so you're not in that open, soft, joyful energy. You're in this like, I'm a soldier. Yeah, it's almost like I'm ready for war. You're armored up and you're trying to get things done so that no more pain comes, so he doesn't wound you any further. And so it's so important to start experiencing God's healing in a real way, in a felt way, so that you create that safety. And no matter what he's doing, no matter how he's showing up, you now feel safe. You are secure and you don't feel like you have to put the armor on anymore. And that's really what is needed here. And that's exactly what I walk the wives in Restored through, because this is a big journey. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it and say like, yeah, just invite God's love in and everything's gonna go better for you. I mean, yes, that's true, but there's so much in there that one sentence, there's like so much to wade through. And so that's what I do with the wives inside Restored. And it is a powerful community full of healing and getting your hope back and coming back to who you are as a woman. It's just a great next step if you're struggling with this.
Yeah, I think it really is true of men or women when you're thinking about your spouse and when you're acting towards them, like how you perceive it is important. So like if you look at your husband as if he's an idiot, and you talk to him as if he's an idiot, and you treat him as if he's an idiot, then he starts to kind of live in this environment where he thinks that way and acts that way. Or if you look at him as if he's a king, and you treat him like he's a king, and you talk to him like he's a king, then he starts to step up into that energy, that kingly energy that he has as a son of the King of Kings. And the same is true of a man speaking to a wife. I mean, that applies too. Like if you look at her like a child and you treat her like a child, you talk to her like a child, well, that creates a different energy than if you're looking at her like a queen, a princess of God. It's going to change the way you approach each other when you start to see each other the way God sees them. That is a powerful mind shift to have, and it really raises the bar. It really raises that energy, and that's the reality. This is who they are. So start to treat them and talk to them and act
Yeah.
that way. It is just a powerful shift. And so, men, if you're in this situation, you're listening to this podcast and you're like, well, what do I do? How do I respond when my wife is in this more masculine energy? She is emasculating me and she's treating me this way. You have more power. You're not a victim to this. That's a really important thing for us as men to realize. We're not a victim to this. We're allowing these things in, and we're allowing them to affect our identity. What a man really needs is God's voice over you needs to be louder than your wife's voice over you in these situations. You need to be listening to his voice. You need to go back to him for your identity, for your respect, for your sense of who you are as a man. You go back to the Father's voice. You go back to him and get your identity from him. And his voice has to be much louder than your wife's voice. And that will start to shift and change your energy too, as you are listening to the Father instead of listening to your wife's voice and her energy over you. And then you have more of a say in how you're treated than you sometimes let on. Like, you're not a victim. You can also set boundaries, have that self-respect, and you say what you need to say. And this is something that we work on inside of my Refined Men's membership too, is how do you respond? Like, what are some practical ways to, like, if your wife is coming at you with this, like, how do you get the healing that you need with God, like I was just saying, and then how do you start to respond in a way that is still loving and kind, and yet also firm and strong in your masculinity, so that you're setting a boundary, you're protecting the relationship, and you're saying, this is what I need in this relationship, and this is what I'm going to choose to do if this disrespect continues to happen. I'm going to protect our relationship, our connection, by taking an action. Like, maybe your wife is coming at you hot and heavy and disrespectful in the moment, and you're like, we need to take a reset. I need 10 minutes here. I'm going to go take that 10 minutes. And when I come back, I want us to reset our energy. I want us to really think through how we're going to speak to each other in a peaceful way. So there are ways to move forward, and there are ways to, like, handle these situations in a stronger way.
So in this whole topic, this isn't about perfection. We're not, again, coming at you and saying, you are an emasculating wife. Like, there is no accusation here. I know that your heart is hurting, and we want you to, invite in that healing that you need and come back in alignment with who you are. And you're not an emasculating wife. That's not who you are. And men, you're not a man who's not capable. His wife is smarter or better or does it all right. And then you're just never enough. That's not who you are either. And so we want you to come back to thriving in who you really are and living from this place where those wounds are getting healing. And so we hope this started some reflection for you, but I hope it's really gentle reflection. Give yourself compassion, offer yourself love, and invite God's voice in, because he brings you closer to his best for you with love. He doesn't accuse. He doesn't call you names. He brings you back into who you are and his best for you, which is to build each other up with your words. He brings you into that gently and lovingly. So we hope this was helpful. We'd love for you to rate and review the podcast, and we will see you next week.